Professor Muhammad Yunus's interim government in Bangladesh has reportedly asked Hindus to wrap up Durga Puja festivities before Azan begins. Now, if this is indeed an official instruction, it is a peculiar one, coming at a time when Yunus and co. have been busy trying to do damage control over the continued reports of attacks on Hindus in newly liberated Bangladesh. Professor Yunus even went as far as to say that reports of attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh were exaggerated, only to be made to look like a fool by the vicious beating of a Hindu boy in a police station just days later. The truth is, Professor Muhammad Yunus has felt the need to issue orders silencing Durga Puja celebrations reportedly in time for Azan because he is fully aware, is he not, of the rabid communal mobs that have now been empowered in Bangladesh in the guise of a student revolution. By even feeling the need to issue such an order, Professor Yunus has basically admitted that he isn't responsible for violent repercussions should any Hindu dare to continue loud Durga Puja celebrations while Azan is on. Their biggest festival, and they need to behave. But none of this should surprise anyone. I'm certainly not surprised. In fact, the very first warning sign that Professor Muhammad Yunus is no messiah was in the kind of huge adulation he received from the global pseudo-liberal commentariat, including its very vocal chapter here in India, which stretches from politics to media to civil society. They projected Yunus as the savior of Bangladesh from the evils of dictatorship in the Dark Ages. They lauded him and praised him as a beloved Nobel laureate worthy of leading a bruised nation back to strength. Our very own Narayan Murthy publicly declared Yunus as a leader that the world desperately needs. He's the guy asking minority Hindus to shut down their loudspeakers before Azan on Durga Puja. Now, some of you may argue that's only fair. After all, the same Yunus government has also announced strict action against anyone attempting to disrupt Durga Puja celebrations, which is very welcome, but it's also pretty much their job. In that case, why this ominous onus on the minority Hindu community during their biggest festival? Because the truth is, viewer, Professor Yunus is no more than a puppet, and I will explain. In the month since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, and let's be clear, Sheikh Hasina had a mountain of issues we can talk about separately. The truth is, the facade of a wise, venerable new leader of Bangladesh like Yunus has come crashing down. It is also increasingly clear that far from being a measured global leader, Professor Yunus is totally okay with fanning anti-India sentiment in his country, the only currency it appears that works in the newly liberated Bangladesh. Professor Muhammad Yunus has proven to be exactly the kind of lily-livered, spineless leader that hardliners love. For all his projected sobriety, he has shown in just a month that far from being a leader from whom Naya Bangladesh will flow, he's just the next puppet for hardliners who had lost power and control under the Sheikh Hasina regime. For years, Yunus was celebrated by sections of India's liberal intelligentsia for his work in microfinance and his Nobel Peace Prize, which seemed to position him as a beacon of progressive values. His critique of the Awami League's authoritarian tendencies, particularly under Sheikh Hasina, resonated with those in India who were similarly critical of strongman politics. Professor Yunus was seen as a figure who could potentially steer Bangladesh towards a more democratic and inclusive future. However, the interim government under Yunus has taken decisions that are far from the ideals of his Indian supporters had hoped for, or anyone who had hoped for a more peaceful Bangladesh. His administration's cooling of relations with India, along with the rise of Islamist groups that have historically been anti-India and dangerous for regional and global peace, has been a very, very rude wake-up call. The very liberals who once championed Professor Yunus are now faced with the uncomfortable truth that his leadership might not align with India's interests, regional interests, or the broader values of secularism and regional cooperation. This situation has exposed a significant miscalculation, viewer. In their eagerness to support a figure who opposed the Hasina government's authoritarianism, India's pseudo-liberals, or rather global pseudo-liberals, including the American deep state, overlooked the potential for Yunus to foster a government that could be even less aligned with regional interests, specifically India's. And let's face it, in this region, India is surrounded by a whole bunch of trouble. The resurgence of groups like the Jamaat-e-Islami, for instance, under Professor Yunus's watch, and the apparent endorsement of anti-India sentiments within Bangladesh are stark reminders of the complexities involved in regional politics. No doubt about that. Nobody was surprised when the first move by Professor Yunus was ordering the release of jailed former Prime Minister and key opposition leader Khalida Zia, hours after her arch-rival Sheikh Hasina was ousted and the military took power. That was only to be expected. Nobody should be surprised by that. A few days later, however, 2 Bangladeshi diplomats stationed at the High Commission in India were mysteriously sacked. Professor Yunus also stayed strangely silent as student groups in Bangladesh peddled dangerous rumors that Bangladesh floods were caused by India's deliberate opening of the Dombor Dam. Rumors that were quickly dispelled with facts globally. Yunus made no efforts to debunk this dangerous nonsense at a time when anti-India and anti-Hindu sentiment was high in his country. On August the 27th, Professor Muhammad Yunus freed anti-India terrorist Jashimuddin Rahmani of the ABT, an affiliate of the Al-Qaeda. What was the hurry to release this terrorist? How is that part of your first 50-day agenda, Professor Yunus? He still hasn't answered that. Rahmani has gone on, by the way, to publicly call for independent Kashmir and Khalistan. So well done, Professor Yunus. The very next day, the interim government of Bangladesh ended the ban on the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, its student wing, the Islami Chhatra Shibir, and all associated organizations, both of them notorious for fanning the flames of anti-India sentiment and infusing their politics with dangerous, inflammatory statements about India at a time when Indians and the Indian expat population in Bangladesh is under threat, and that the attacks on Hindus are being conflated with anti-India sentiment. Remember, the Hindus in Bangladesh belong to Bangladesh. They are citizens of Bangladesh. They are not Indians. Most recently, we've seen reports of Dhaka banning the export of the prized Padma Hilsa, or Ilish fish, to India during the Durga Puja celebrations. A ridiculous, juvenile move designed to provoke. This delicacy, this fish, used to be sent from Bangladesh as a goodwill gesture. But the very fact that Professor Yunus has chosen an issue of culture and sentiment to send out a message shows he cannot make his own decisions and must bow repeatedly to hardliners who truly call the shots today in Bangladesh. In retrospect, or hardly in retrospect, because this hell has only just begun, the enthusiastic support for Yunus among global pseudo-liberals, the global commentariat who want the public to view him as some kind of a political messiah, now appears to be an exercise in wishful thinking, driven more by opposition to the Modi-Hasina friendship than by a careful consideration of what Professor Yunus's leadership would really mean for India. As the reality of Yunus's government unfolds, viewer, these supporters are left with proverbial egg on their face, forced to reckon with the unintended consequences of their shallow advocacy. India, of course, is no deer in the woods. It must navigate and find relationships in Naya Bangladesh, including with Professor Yunus. But let's not for a moment be mistaken about who we are dealing with.
আজান ও নামাজের সময় যেন কোনো বাদ্যযন্ত্র বা মাইকের ব্যবহার নিয়ন্ত্রণ রাখা মাইক সেই সময় বন্ধই রাখতে হবে। এটাও ভাই আমাদের সাথে এগ্রি করছে। আজানের কমের পক্ষে 5 মিনিট আগেই এই ধরনের কার্যকলাপ বন্ধ রাখতে হবে এবং নামাজ শেষ হওয়া পর্যন্ত এই ধরনের কার্যকলাপ বন্ধ রাখতে হবে। আর ভাই আমার সাথে আরো এগ্রি করছে এরা সবাই যে অনেক সময় দেখা যায় যে একটা বাদ্যযন্ত্র রেখে দিল, আজান হইতেছে, হয়তো বাদ্য ওই যান্ত্রিক গ্রহণে নাই বা অন্য জন্য এসে একটা শুরু করে দিল। ওই ক্ষেত্রে ভাই আমাদের ক্ষেত্রে এরা সবাই আমাদেরকে এনশিওর করছে যে কোনো রকমের যেন এরকম কেউ করতে না পারে তার ব্যবস্থা গ্রহণ করবে।
I am deeply shocked and disturbed by the recent statement from the advisor to the Bangladeshi Home Minister, mandating that Hindus must stop pujas, playing mridang, singing bhajan or any rituals 5 minutes before Azan starts, or they will be arrested. Even before this directive, Hindus in Bangladesh have faced harassment and attacks for practicing their religion or using loudspeakers during puja. But now with this order potentially becoming law, I am gravely concerned that Hindu minorities will be systematically targeted, attacked, and even imprisoned simply for practicing their faith. What's even more distressing is that while these atrocities are taking place in Bangladesh, India is proceeding with playing cricket with them, turning a blind eye to the crisis for help from Hindu minorities. This is deeply saddening, and it raises serious questions about where our priorities lie.
And of course, the latest big move by the Professor Yunus government is the release of a hardline Islamic terrorist and a hardline Islamist cleric from Bangladesh, Jashimuddin Rahmani, leader of a terror outfit, the Ansarullah Bangladesh Team, that is affiliated to the Al-Qaeda. Well, upon his release, this gentleman here, this terrorist here, has called for Jihad in Jammu and Kashmir after being released from prison. The release was approved and ordered by Professor Muhammad Yunus. Within the first 50 days of his government, this was his priority, to release a man who is affiliated with the Al-Qaeda. Rahmani also has urged West Bengal's Mamata Banerjee to declare independence from India. Rahmani, who outlined a 5-point plan to fracture India, has ties with the Al-Qaeda, like I said. Take a look at this report by India Today's Gaurav Sawant.
Hardline Islamist cleric in Bangladesh, Jashimuddin Rahmani, head of Ansarullah Bangladesh Team, spewing venom against India, calling for jihad for Jammu and Kashmir. Rahmani was released from prison on the instructions of the Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus government's order after the ouster of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Rahmani also appealed to Mamata Banerjee to declare independence from India. Rahmani's radical Islamist outfit, Ansarullah Bangladesh Team, is linked to the banned terrorist organization Al-Qaeda and preaches the formation of an Islamic state. In his speech, Rahmani gave a 5-point action plan to break India. Support Khalistan terror. Jihad for freedom of Jammu and Kashmir. Ask Mamata Banerjee to declare independence. Calls to cut off Shiliguri corridor. Raise Islamist flag on Red Fort in Delhi. Rahmani was locked up in the high-security Qasimpur prison in Bangladesh for abetting the murder of a blogger in Bangladesh in 2013. He has been accused of ordering the killing of several atheist bloggers in Bangladesh between 2013 and 2016.
These kind of futile statements coming from Bangladesh and being given this opportunity to talk against India, I think is against India's interest, and I think India will not tolerate. It will require a lot of beefing up of our border security once again. It will require a much greater coordination with the government of Bangladesh, which it is not good for them also.
Rahmani was convicted in 2015 and jailed. However, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus government not only withdrew charges against several opposition leaders, including Begum Khalida Zia and Jamaat-e-Islami Amir Shafiqur Rahman, but also ordered the release of Rahmani.
और यहाँ के बाद में उसने बड़े पैमाने पर हिंदुस्तान को बर्बाद करने की धमकी दी है। सबसे पहले वो कहता है कि हिंदुस्तान से कश्मीर को और पंजाब को अलग किया जाएगा, और कश्मीरियों को कहे और पंजाबियों को कहे कि अभी समय आ गया है कि हिंदुस्तान के खिलाफ बगावत करो। साथ ही साथ वो कह रहा है कि चाइना को हम बोलेंगे कि जो चिकन नेक एरिया है उसको ब्लॉक करे, ताकि नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न जो स्टेट्स हैं वो हिंदुस्तान के खिलाफ बगावत करें और अपनी फ्रीडम मांगे। मुझे नहीं लगता कि एक आतंकवादी जो बांग्लादेश में बैठा हुआ है उसके कहने से हिंदुस्तान बर्बाद हो सकता है।
There are apprehensions that radical Islamist elements could try and create trouble in the states bordering Bangladesh, with the interim government in Dhaka showing no visible steps to crack down on radical Islamists like Rahmani. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me live from Dhaka now is Advocate Rabindra Ghosh. He is president of the Bangladesh Minority Watch. He is in Bangladesh's capital right now. Rabindra ji, What is the current situation in Bangladesh concerning minorities? The government, has taken certain decisions. They have asked Hindus not to celebrate Durga Puja when Azan begins. The export of Padma Ilish fish has been banned to India. What is going on? What is the current situation? Give us a realistic picture, sir.
Yes. After 5th of August 2024, you know it better that Sheikh Hasina left the country, setting aside all the administrative machinery. And Hindus are attacked by the extremists when laws and order are no longer in the government. After Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left, and the atrocities on the Hindu minorities are going on steadily. And it is also important that during the period of Sheikh Hasina, there was also atrocity on the minorities in Bangladesh.
Yes.
During the regime of other government, there was an atrocity on minorities of Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I have a documentation and I have a report, various kind of. I was going to different parts of the country to visit and for fact finding. And we have our knowledge regarding this atrocity. And most of the Hindus have left in the meantime due to atrocities in the country.
Yeah.
So, and you know it better, most of the crime against humanity occurred during the time after Sheikh Hasina left and before Sheikh Hasina was there. The problem is that no government of Bangladesh could tackle the situation to give legal remedy to the victims, Hindu victims. We are documenting various incidents of atrocities on Hindus, and most of the cases have been ended in a smoke. No justice to the Hindus at that material time. And we are also still going in different parts of the country to visit because of the fact Hindus are in great danger. And there are some other minorities, and they are also in great danger. I visited different parts of the country in the meantime.
Yes.
And in Thakurgarh district, more than 100 atrocities occurred during the period after Sheikh Hasina left. What is the crime of the Hindus they have committed? They are the Bengali people. They are also the like Bangladesh very much, because we achieved independence in the year 1971, and as a freedom fighter, we fought for the country in the year 1971, not for Hindus, but for everybody. We are the secular people of the country. What we did during this period, and we hope the government must take up the matter immediately for the protection of the rights of the minority Hindus in Bangladesh.
But Rabindraji, the Professor Muhammad Yunus government is saying that all these reports of attacks on Hindus are exaggerated. They are saying that this is all fake news. They are saying that nobody is being attacked. There is no anti-minority violence at all in Bangladesh. Why are they saying that?
No. If he says, Muhammad Yunus, if he says like this, it is a fake news. It is not at all correct, because we have our documentation. We have our reports. We visited the place of occurrence. We talked to the victims, and they are going because of safety and security. And most of them have already been killed. Some of them have already been killed, and some of them already left. I don't know where they have gone. But Dr. Yunus, what is telling like this, it is not at all correct.
Okay.
So I have a documentation. I like to show it to the people of the country and as well as to the world that Hindus are in great difficulty in Bangladesh. They are not in a position to take any legal shelter. In spite of that, we are going to court, and court is also silent about this matter. So what will be the future of this government, I don't know. But the problem is that the present government, interim government,
Yes.
is trying to do something, but what the Sheikh Hasina has done, it is not our lookout. Our aims and objectives to give the legal shelter to the Hindu community in Bangladesh, because we are fighting for minority community in Bangladesh since long. So we have our documentation, we have our reports, we have our picture, we have our videos, everything is here. Because we talk to the victims in the ground zero level, and they are also exposing that they have been tortured, intimidated, they have been killed by the perpetrator of crime against humanity.
Advocate Rabindra Ghosh, thank you very much, sir, for giving us that very candid view from Dhaka of what is going on there, because it's very difficult to see from this distance what is going on, even though we've reported from the ground. But I thank you for that detailed input on collecting documentation, videos, etc. And we will be continuing to report on the situation as far as minorities in Bangladesh is concerned. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me from Dhaka. Thank you. I want to bring in Gaurav Sawant, India Today's managing editor, also in on this story because he's been reporting on it non-stop. The release, Gaurav, of Jashimuddin Rahmani of the ABT, an affiliate of the Al-Qaeda, being a priority of the Professor Muhammad Yunus government, makes the mask completely come off. One can imagine Rahmani being released maybe after a few years, but within the first month itself, the priority was to release this guy. It betrays the reality of what's going on.
Shiv, you're absolutely right. It's just that it prima facie appears that radical Islamists have ridden piggyback on a students' movement, on a students' anger and revolution. And then the students have been thrown to the wayside. And these radical Islamists seem to have taken over with Professor Muhammad Yunus, a Nobel laureate, perhaps as the mask, for these radical Islamists to rule the roost. And Shiv, there have been multiple steps that Mr. Rabindra Ghosh, an advocate who's documenting all these facts in Dhaka, brought out so aptly. It's not just one decision. Initially, in what is often described as the fog of war, Hindus were targeted and the temples were targeted. They said in the first 48 hours, nobody was in charge. That's why it happened. But subsequently, there's been systematic targeting of Hindus, even though Bangladesh claims that they're far more evolved and they're educated and they're not radical Islamists like those in Pakistan, Afghanistan. But Hindu teachers and professors being made to quit their jobs, being forced to resign, certain judges being targeted, and now Hindus being told in Bangladesh that you will have to stop your puja, you will have to stop Durga Puja 5 minutes before Azan. So this is basically sending out that message that Hindus are second-rate citizens. First right on puja, on prayers is of the Muslims. Muslims will have their Azan will have the right of way, and Hindus will have to wait. Their Durga Puja does not matter. Point one. Point two, there are multiple steps that have been taken. So, for example, in Bengal, the hilsa fish, especially around Durga Puja time or in major festivities, it's a delicacy. The Padma hilsa, the fish that comes from Bangladesh. There was a ban on export, but Sheikh Hasina made an exception for India, and 4,000 tons of that fish, according to Bangladeshi newspapers, comes to India. This new dispensation has put a halt on it just before Durga Puja festivities. So all of this shows an openly hostile attitude being displayed by Bangladesh towards India and Hindus in Bangladesh.
Gaurav, thanks very much for that. Clearly a story that isn't going to be ending anytime soon. Business as usual, not quite. Not anytime close. We'll keep a track of that story.